Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another Memories of Plymouth program. We have been conducting these interviews for the past 8 or 9 years. I should get my act together and figure out how many years we've actually done it and how many people we've actually interviewed. From the very beginning, we were trying to collect the stories and the memories of Plymouth and the surrounding areas. And we have a special guest with us today, and I guess I'm going to hand it over to you and ask you to introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is John Chesman Nelson Jr. Most people know me as Jack. That makes basically because I'm a junior, and my grandfather and my great-grandfather were also John, so every other generation was called Jack. I was born in Framingham, Massachusetts in 1945, and we moved to Plymouth in the fall of 1951. I was in the first grade. My father moved up here to get out of the city and also to become an antique gun dealer. And we first moved to a place out on Mayhew Turnpike, which is very close to the field where the Yet and Matt garage is now. And that was in 51. And that was at the same time that they were building the new barn over at Yetton's. And you can see it from the road over there now off Yetton Road.
Mom and Dad, would you share their names with me?
Yeah, my father's name was John Nelson, and my mother's name was Catherine Gavin Nelson. And they were both born in 1915.
Both born in 1915.
Yeah.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
That's going to take us back a while.
And we moved up here. I had my brother Dana that was alive at the time. He was 2 years younger than me, and in 1954, we had another brother born, Peter Nelson. Both of them have since passed away. Peter was 39, and Dana was passed away 7 years ago.
Wow, such a loss.
Yep.
Such a loss. I'm not sure I could remember Peter. He was much younger.
Yeah.
But Dana, definitely I can.
Yeah, Dana was 2 years younger.
Okay.
And Peter was just a baby when we moved to Keble Street, which was next door to you on Pleasant Street.
Right. I remember Pleasant Street. Do you have memories? First, I think I remember all the kids that lived there, their mothers and fathers. You and I could probably go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and do it.
Yeah, there's quite a street, because we were on one Keble Street, and on Keble Street, the McIvers were on the other side corner, Dr. McIver, and there was two kids, Ann, which was in my class, and Neil, who was a selectman in Plymouth. And if you go up Wentworth Street, the Halls lived up there. Neil Cowan lived up that way.
Very good.
On Wentworth Street, you had the Driscolls, and the Dunns, Laura Deming. And around the corner, the other way, was the O'Briens.
The Ayer family was around the corner. Insurance people, Ayer,
Yeah.
Linnell and Ayer. Okay, wow.
And then on Pleasant Street, there was also Nichols Funeral Home, which was the Carpenter family. And it was
Bolios.
the Bolios, and
Father was administrator to the hospital.
right. And that's about it, real close. Oh, and the Foleys were over on Langdon Street. There was John and Bobby and Martha and Billy.
Very
And
good. Very
Mr.
good.
Foley was a coach at the college.
Professor at the college as
Yeah.
well. And did we do the heirs? I think we did already.
Yeah.
We did. Well, that was fun. That was fun. Thank you.
There
Going
was
backwards.
There was quite a few families with kids in that area at the time.
Well, we were very fortunate. All we had to do was go through Russell Park. Is that what we'll call it? Russell Grounds. And then on the other side of the street, we were at the elementary school.
Yeah, we used to walk through Russell Field,
Field,
past
that's
the
what it
Russell
is.
House. Boyd Hall wasn't there. Pemmy Hall was not there. And there was no college campuses, no college houses on that side of the road at that time.
At that time, wow. Please, one more time for me, share what your mom did and your father did, if they had an occupation.
Yeah, my mom, she stayed at home when we moved up here. Prior to that, she worked as a secretary for a foundry in Framingham, and my dad was a florist by trade in Massachusetts, and he and his mother grew carnations for the wholesale flower market. They had a 250,000 square feet of greenhouses where they grew the flowers
That's amazing.
off Prospect Street in Framingham.
Wow. Let's go into your education a little bit. By the time you got here, you were 7 years old?
No, I turned 6 up here.
Here.
I was in first grade in the Plymouth Elementary School.
Did you happen to have kindergarten down in Massachusetts?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
Okay.
And we lived outside of Plymouth, so I think most of the kids that attended kindergarten locally probably walked to school.
I would agree with you at that time. And then some of the teachers that you might have had, and maybe of them, of all the teachers, is there one or two that you remembered with fondness, and maybe not so much fondness?
I think I can remember Mrs. Doloff. It was first grade teacher because I can remember her showing slides one time of I think the coronation of Queen Elizabeth.
Wow.
Second grade was either Mrs. Greenwood or Miss Wynot, I'm thinking. Then we had Miss Spitzner, Miss O'Neill, and
You're doing well.
I'm not sure what other teachers there might have been in elementary school. Then over in middle school, there was downstairs, Mr. Sylvester, he taught math. Mrs. Sanderson, I think, taught English. Mr. Ames taught English also for the 7th and 8th grade. 7th and 8th grade science was Mr. O'Mara. Not sure any other ones. Mr. O'Mara was, I think he was a great teacher. He generated a lot of interest for me in the sciences and things like that.
So many of the names that you just mentioned, I am quite sure with my history background, they went to Plymouth Normal School, Teachers College, whatever at the time, and then they just moved over to the public school system, which was a hop, skip.
Right.
Yeah.
And then some of them, after they'd had a few years' experience, I think went back to the college as teachers.
I bet you're right.
You know?
I bet you're right. Wow, that was fun. Very fun. Let's see what we have. How about memories related? Oh, no, I'm going to stay on education. When you finished high school, did you pursue education beyond?
Yeah, I went to college in Boston at Wentworth Institute and majored in metallurgy. And I was down there a year and then I left and stuff and came home and worked around here for a couple of years.
Wow.
You know, I worked construction and helped build the dining hall at Holiness Prep School, the Plymouth College new library, a bunch of different jobs for Audley Construction, including the one at Exit 26 here up until that was in 1969. And in 1969, I left and went into service.
Okay, I'm going to go backwards a little
Yeah.
bit. Oddly's well-known construction company at the time?
Yeah, oh, and they still are. They're still a big company. They're down in Bow, New Hampshire. Their headquarters are.
How about the military? I'd like to know a little bit more.
Well, I was in the Navy Seabees, which is the construction part of the Navy. We worked closely with the Marines. In fact, part of our training was with the Marines. I served 2 tours in Vietnam with Mobile Construction Battalion 9. And then the last year I was in the Special Operations Unit, the CB Team 0913, which we spent about 5 months of intensive training, both professionally for the construction trades and the military part, in which also included Vietnamese language school and SEER training.
I don't know what that is.
SEER training is survival, escape, resistance, and evasion. And it's a specialized training thing, and it's a survival thing, and they also teach you if you should get captured,
What
the protocol is and how to conduct yourself.
Wow.
And that week, a week and a half, I lost 16 pounds.
I can understand
Because
why.
where they used to run the course, they would run the same survival skills across the same piece of property. This was in Warner Springs, California, which is down near San Diego, but out in the desert.
For the length of time you were there, the 2 tours, did you get to know the people at all there?
Well, when I was on the CB team, we basically did all our work was civic action work. We worked with the people, and we also taught a group of young men the construction trades. I had a couple men in the mechanic shop, welders, a lot in the building trades, carpenters, masons, and that would be it in the building trades, equipment operators, surveying.
Did you pick up any of their language and vice versa? Did they get to know a little bit of our language?
Well, I went to language school, which helped quite a bit. It was kind of funny is because the people that were teaching us the language were from the cities, and we were out in the country, so a lot of things were cut short, and then we used different terminology, such as Baya Lamea is what time it is. In the country, they would say Baya, just asking what the time was and stuff. But the kids, well, we call them kids, but we weren't. I was 23, and most of these kids were like 16 and stuff like that. So there wasn't a big age difference, but they treated us with respect, and I think they learned a lot.
Good.
Hopefully, they made it through when things changed over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a little town called Godaha near the Cambodian border, halfway between Kuching and Tay Ninh.
Was that your first experience out of the country, or had you traveled before?
No, that was my first trip. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that most of the guys over there probably hadn't been very far
From home?
from home at all.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Interesting. Memories related to businesses. What was your first job that you can remember?
My first job was they were just redoing the J.J. Newberry store in Plymouth.
On Main Street?
Yep, and we were hired mostly, I was 16, to move inventory around as they were stocking shelves and this and that. The construction part had already been completed, so it was near the end of the school year, and we had, there was quite a group of us that worked there, moving inventory around, stocking shelves and things like that.
And they still had the downstairs
Yes,
at that time?
yep, that was new when they built the new store. I don't know if it was in the old store like that or not.
I don't know either.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd like to know that. That'd be interesting.
Mhm.
How much renovation took place?
Yeah, but it was, and then from there, I went to work at construction over at the Favre House over on, well, I'll call it Texas Hill Road. I don't know exactly the name
close
for
to
it, but
Plymouth
they were rebuilding the house, and the guys that were restoring the inside were friends of my dad's that were in the antique business. So I used to get, Dad would drive me to work in the morning and pick me up at night. And I can remember working with a brick mason, doing a lot of brickwork down back, and I spent a lot of time cleaning antique bricks of the old mortar so he could use it to build these new walls on the back of the house in the basement.
So the house was still in existence when they moved there, the Favres?
Yes, this was an old house, old colonial house.
It's beautiful.
And that was also my first experience with fiberglass insulation. They had me do some insulating in the new bathroom upstairs, and it was a really hot day, and the windows were open, and I decided it was really hot, so I was working without my shirt on, which was a big mistake, because that fiberglass sticks to your skin really good when you sweat. So then that night I can remember going up, I lived in Rumney at the time, went up to the swimming hole in the brook, and I worked for quite a while trying to get that fiberglass off me in the brook. It helped a lot.
A good lesson
But
learned.
it was a good lesson not to do that again.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then after that?
Let's see. After that, I worked construction for Audley down on the main street of Meredith. For a few, they would hire people intermittently for short periods of time to get certain jobs done that needed a lot of manual labor. They just call us laborers. Worked on the Laconia bypass for them also. Worked at as a laborer at the Bristol Elementary School, no, high school, on the cafeteria at the Holderness Prep School, the library at the college. It was good money. It was usually at least twice the amount of what the minimum wage was. It was usually at least $2 an hour.
I'm trying to think, $2 an hour was the minimum wage or $2 more than the minimum wage?
I was getting $2 an hour. The minimum wage was $1. Now, I can remember
Say that one more time.
the minimum wage was $1 and I was making $2 or more an hour. And back at that time, you could get 4 gallons of gas for $1. You could go to the movies, take a date to the movies, then go to Fausti's and get French fries and a Coke or whatever, all for $5.
Good days gone by.
Right.
Wow, wow. Any more businesses that you can recall? And I'm also interested, where did you come up with your skill set for doing construction? Where did you learn some of those skills?
Well, that part of it was mostly labor. It was mostly using a shovel to move dirt and this and that, or shovel things into the cement mixes and things like that.
I could do that.
Stuff like, yeah. And of course, when I was in the service, I learned a lot more, but that was after those. And then I worked on Tenny Mountain, building the chairlift that goes to the top of the mountain and is still in existence today.
Jack, when was that?
That was in the fall of 1964, because I can remember Sam was in a real hurry to get the mountain opened that winter. So we were working long hours pouring the foundations for the towers. But then at the top, for months, we had to stage all this material for the big concrete stand that would support the top wheel at the top of the mountain. And we took us months to stage that, because that had to be, it was somewhere between 25 and 30 cubic yards of concrete. So there would be 6 bags of concrete per yard, plus all the stone and rock to go with it in the water. And we started in one morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we finished around 4 o'clock the next morning. Near dark, the first night there, Sam brought up a bunch of extra people and brought us a bunch of extra food, because I don't think he expected it to be that long. But 6 bag, it's a 1 bag mixer, 6 bags to a yard. That's like 180 loads we had to load that mixer with the cement, the stone, and the sand.
Can I say that most of the people that started out working at Tenny Mountain with you, they finished the job? How long did it take?
Oh, after I finished?
Yeah.
Because I got through a couple weeks after that, but then they had to have the people from, I think, Switzerland come over and splice the cables. So it did open in the winter of 64.
64. He and his wife, they had 2 children? Did they have more?
They had 1, 2, 3,
Stephen.
4, 5. Wait a
5
minute.
total?
They had Stephen,
Stephen.
Keith, who was my class,
Okay.
Penny, and Gardner.
Gardner.
Yeah,
Gardner.
Gardner's the youngest.
Wow, wow. I wonder if they all worked there in a certain way.
I'm not sure. They didn't work on the mountain when I was there doing that. I think Keith was still going to, he was going to college in Boston. I'm not sure if Stephen was still, I think he was in, I think it was Princeton or Yale, maybe. And Penny and Gardner were still, I think, still in school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was fun to review that a little bit. Any other jobs you want to bring up?
Well, Keith and I, we got into a business when we were in elementary school making Christmas decorations.
Keep going.
Yeah, we started, Keith and I were trying to figure out a way to make some money for Christmas. So he had access to the greens to make Christmas decorations as we were cutting them off the road that was going up the Tenny Mountain. In the first winter, we made swags and went around the neighborhood selling them door to door. In the second year, Keith got permission to use the information booth downtown, and we actually put up Christmas lights and had the display of what we made. I think we were making swags and centerpieces at that time.
So for the audience, should we tell them where the information booth was? On the corner of Main Street and Court Street.
Yeah, right across the street from Fraser's Diner.
Very good.
Yep.
That's very good. Yeah, yeah.
And we did that. And after that, once we moved to Rumney, my brother Dana and I, we did that for a while, made Christmas wreaths. But at that time we had, our dad helped sell some of them. We used to provide them to, I remember the Bristol Bank and quite a few other places. People would be coming to the antique shop there in Rumney or the furniture place, and they'd pick them up when they were visiting.
That was profitable, I hope.
Well, we used to make a wreath on a 16-inch frame, so the wreath would be about 30 inches across. We'd put 25 pine cones and a big red bow, and we used to get $3.
Okay.
It was a lot of work for $3, but
But
it was fun.
you had access to the supplies. We could get acorns.
Yeah, we could get cones and things like that, and then the florist supplies. My dad we used to buy them from a wholesaler in Boston, because my dad was familiar with when he was in the florist business in Massachusetts.
So fun. And so if I drove by your house today, would I see any?
Well, at my house, I live out on Tenny Mountain Highway, the last house on the left before you go out. I put wreaths on the doors and one on the peak of the garage, and then I have use about 8,000 or 9,000 Christmas lights and put them all over the trees on my property, along with about a half of a mile of extension cords.
I think we need one more time. How many?
Oh, probably 8,000 to 9,000 lights.
I heard it correctly.
Yeah, and then people ask, geez, these lights look different from last year. And I say, well, every year they do grow a little bit. And I trim them up. And
oh my gosh, that must be a spectacle.
I have lights on about 22 or 23 trees. You can't maybe see all of them for the road because up in front of the house,
Blocks.
there's a bunch over there too.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm trying to switch gears a little bit if you're ready to go on.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about the town as we were growing up. And the first question is just think about your time living in this town. You were a young child.
Mm-hmm.
You went to your public schools that we had here, elementary, junior
Right.
high, and high school. And then as a young adult, you went away a little bit to go to school, college.
Right.
What was it like growing up?
Well, the biggest thing I can remember about Main Street, Plymouth, is the huge elm trees that used to line the streets, up and down the streets, and down past where the Flying Monkey is, all the way down South Main Street also. A lot of shops. The bank originally was where Wolfson's Jewelers is today. Then it got, where the bank is today, used to be a diner there that they moved out to West Plymouth. It was Clyde Booth's diner. And they built the bank there. I think President Eisenhower came in 1952 or 54, 55.
I got my fingers
Okay,
up.
55, and opened the bank.
Yeah.
And there was like 10 or 12 gas stations on Main Street, but they were not just gas stations, they were all service stations also. You know, you could get your cars serviced and repaired. And there was lots of, there was 3 or 4 drugstores. There was York Drugstore over in the corner by the bank. Then there was Farley's where near Volpe's. And then there was Geyer's, the other side of Newberry's, what used to be the other side of Newberry's.
That's pretty amazing. Each one of them had a pharmacy. They had a place for a luncheonette section.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they all had soda fountains. And one thing I do remember about Farley's is I think they made the best ham salad sandwich in town.
Do I dare ask how much it cost, approximately?
I would probably say it was maybe 25 cents maybe or something. I remember one of the women that worked there was Marion Hussey,
I know the name.
Fred's sister or wife.
All right.
Yep, she worked in the kitchenette or the soda fountain.
And Hussey, for our audience, was he in charge of
He was a superintendent of roads
roads?
for years and years and years. And there was a lot of shops in Plymouth. If you start with there was Fausti's restaurant. There was the Steak Village Cafe down underneath what used to be the bakery.
Anderson's Bakery,
Yeah.
for most of us.
Yeah, and then it was Blake's Restaurant, which is where the Chinese Hong Kong Garden is. There was Frazier's Diner. There was Potter's restaurant, which was right across the street from your dad's store.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. The clothing stores, there was a Saliba's women's and men's, and the men's also used to sell clothing for the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. And then there was O'Brien's department store, which was where Ski Fanatics is now.
Good.
It was. Then they had both an upstairs and downstairs, and after it was that, it became Guinan's Dugout downstairs.
And upstairs. At one time he was upstairs, then he went downstairs. Maybe he used both.
Yep.
Wow.
And then Clay's Newsstand. I often kid about that because they had the best marbles in town. They really did a good job of that. And then Rand's Hardware, they had an awesome toy department. And I think the fellow that used to run the part of that department was Mr. Ryer, R-Y-E-A.
Good memories on this. Good memories. And well, if we had a phone in right now, they'd be probably calling us and adding on to that or telling us we just made a mistake, one or the other.
Right, probably adding on. There was a lot of stuff going on. And of course, back then, everybody got paid on Fridays, so most of the stores in Plymouth were open Friday nights until 9 o'clock. They all used to come into town to cash their checks, do the grocery shopping. You had the First National Store and you had Adams Supermarket, both on Main Street, along with Volpe's.
Right. First National and Adams's were next door to one another for quite some time. And then I think the First National went down to where Wright is today at the end of the street.
Yeah, it did, yeah. And things. And then there's the movie theater, which was a great place to go. I think back when I lived on Keble Street, for the kids, you could probably go to the movies and buy a box of popcorn for $0.25 at the time, I think. Oh, and then I remember Mr. Graves, who used to manage the theater, in the summertime, he came down looking for kids to mow their grass and do the lawn work. And he paid you in free movie passes.
Wow.
Yeah, which was a big deal. But I can remember going up there with a couple other guys a couple times and doing the work. And that was right where Paul and Judy Floyd lived now. He lived in Paul and Judy Floyd's place, which is right across the street from Rainwater's house. And right on the same street as Fletcher Adams lives further down the street.
There we
go. Yeah. And stuff.
That's neat. That's neat.
So
So it was a good time growing up in Plymouth. Is that what we're hearing?
yeah. Well, there's lots of kids to play with and lots of places to go and do, and you felt safe. There weren't any problems with going anywhere, I don't think, in the town. I mean, trick-or-treating, you went out and trick-or-treated.
Came back with a paper bag full of
Candy, more than you could imagine.
Mrs. Cole right across the street. I couldn't believe what she gave us, homemade cookies and such. Really good.
Huh.
I miss that. Miss that a lot. Here we go again. Another question. Childhood memories. And you can pass at any time. I'm going to throw out a word for you and you reflect if you would like. You can. Weather. During your time in Plymouth, surrounding areas, were you ever impacted by weather? And weather can be just high winds, ice caps, flooding, too much water here and there, rain, snow.
I can remember the Innaville being closed, the Innaville being where the college field houses are now. That would flood. And then when we lived in Rumney, sometimes the Baker River would flood, and actually you couldn't get out of Rumney. You could get on the back road, the Quincy Road, but you couldn't go across the Innaville in Rumney to get to the highway, Route 25.
We're in the 60s a little bit. Can you remember when they were building 93?
Yeah.
And we're down to the Interville that you just shared. Today we have quite a few gasoline stations there. But other than that, we had to take the old roads if we were going to go from Plymouth anywhere, north and south.
That's correct, yeah. See, in 1963, wait a minute. Yeah, the road from Ashland, interstate from Ashland to the Plymouth where the Irving station is, I can remember going up to North Ashland Road and watching the Perini's construction company building dirt, moving the dirt with these belly scrapers at night because they worked around the clock because there was so much dirt to move. And then I think that was opened in 62 or 63. And then I was working on the interstate at exit 26 in 1965. And it didn't open, I don't think, didn't open until 66 or 67, I think. And that included the road going out to what is now the new Tenny Mountain Highway.
And look what we have now.
Yep.
Highway that takes you right through the state.
Yeah,
A lot of changes, but that was really dynamic,
it was.
that having that large road come through the state of New Hampshire.
And then it kept going. When I got out of the service in 1970-71, I worked for Bob Crowley, and he had bought the Tufts Outing Club Chalet, which was up on the side of the hill going up towards Lincoln. So he paid like a few dollars for it, but it had to be taken off the side of the building. His father-in-law was Brackett Hill from Tilton, who was a second or third generation building mover. So we started working up there. That was 70, 71. I remember I lost like 20 or 30 pounds that winter working outside, trying to get this building, huge building, double A-frame, which was about 3 stories high, to move it up to another piece of property he had.
You've done construction for a long time.
Yeah, and building. And we also, Bob, when I worked for Bob, we also, behind the post office, there was a 3-story apartment building that we moved down the middle of Main Street in Plymouth, and ended up on a hill down by the Armory, which it has since been torn down because that's where the new dorms are down there.
I'm a kid, and my father's telling me to go up on top of the store, which was flat, because the house was coming through the town
Yeah.
to the Armory.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
took us months to prep the building. Then it took us, we had to get it moved in one day. So the co-op had been all set up and had prepped all the poles so they could move the lines up and down so we could get them under the house underneath the lines.
Safely.
Yeah.
Safely.
And actually, most of the time going down through the middle of town, I was underneath the building with a Brackett Hill, steering it with wheels and come-alongs.
Only if I had known.
Yeah.
Way back when. Way back when.
Oh.
And any fires come to mention that you can think of? Structures in your town, in Rumney, in Plymouth, homes?
I can remember one night there was a really bad thunderstorm, and over on the old Route 25. Well, it wouldn't have been the old Route 25 then, but today.
Okay.
And there was a house got hit by lightning gun, lit up by, got a fire in it.
Wow.
But also it exploded everything inside the house, and the glass was actually hanging in the ceilings, almost like you would see in a horror movie. But in the house next down the street, it caught fire and burned down, I think, at that time.
That's not a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
How about the Plymouth Fair? Did you ever attend?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we used to go to the Plymouth Fair. Well, when I moved to Rumney, we joined the 4-H. And 4-H, you would grow vegetables or whatever you did as a projects in the 4-H. You could display it at the fair, and you get prizes, and a little bit of money,
Whoa.
and stuff like that. But we used to go to the fair almost every year.
I have to ask the question, what ride did you enjoy the most?
Well, I'm not a big ride person myself.
Oh.
I can remember getting on the Bullet with Dana, and they had to shut it off and get me out of there. I remember that. And then I worked there on one of the rides, helped build it in the summer of '63. It was like a tilt-a-whirl. It was on arms, and it had buckets that spin.
Swirling around?
So it was going up and down and around, and the wheels were going around and around.
That might do something to someone's stomach.
Yes. It did.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, and Plymouth was the oldest agricultural fair, and I'm not sure how many we have left.
There aren't very many left.
Not too many left. Yeah.
Deerfield,
Sandwich there.
Sandwich.
Very good.
Deerfield,
Okay.
Kentucky or Hopkinton Fair, I think still goes.
A few.
And I don't know if there's any others or not.
Can you remember when the Plymouth Fair took place? I'm testing you.
Oh, it was like the last or next to the last weekend in August. And the running humor joke was that, oh, it's going to rain because this is the week of
fair's
the
on.
Plymouth Fair. And always used to, by coincidence, rain on that.
Another question. What changes have you seen in town? And people will bring up the largest one probably they can identify with was Tenny Mountain building itself up where it is today.
There was a lot more college buildings, dorms, and classrooms. That's the biggest, probably the biggest change downtown that you would recognize, except there's the lack of all the elm trees have gone, and there's been a change of the ownership of the stores and things like that. But as far as architecture goes, most of it's pretty much the same. Tenny Mountain Highway is, yeah, that's changed a lot.
Multiple large stores, major stores for shopping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Are there people in town that you've met over time and somehow they affected you?
Yeah, probably the biggest one is Bob Crowley. I worked for him, started off part-time in the early 70s, and then I became his first full-time employee, and I worked for Bob until 1976. Yeah, because I remember, because it was later on, that was before my son Chris was born. But then I went to work for Hawkinson Enterprises out in West Plymouth for 10 years and stuff. But Bob, I enjoyed working with Bob.
He was a selectman, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
he was, and I can remember back when I was still working for Bob, Hugh Gallen would stop in and see him once in a while because Bob was instrumental, I think, in getting him to run for governor, things like that.
Is that right?
Yeah, I can remember meeting Hugh, or Hugh Gallen would come swing by and speak to Bob.
Wow.
Sometimes when we were working outside or on the property.
If I was to ask you, what person in your family, in town, who influenced you as a child, a mentor perhaps, who might it be? It can be more than one.
Probably Bob.
Outside your
The guy who used to work for help sometimes. He was kind of an interesting man to work for. Was Mr. Maynard, Ed Maynard.
Oh yes.
He used to make bird houses down behind the movie theater. He used to have a garage shop down there, and he would hire me. This is when I was in elementary school to help him paint the birdhouses. And I think he gave me a quarter or 50 cents, and I'd spend a few hours painting birdhouses sometimes on a weekend. I used to also, in the wintertime, shovel the driveways and walkways of most of the people on Keble Street. Of course, there weren't very many people on Keble Street either.
Well, Ed Maynard lived up there.
Ed Maynard, there was Judge Ernst. There was
Close to that.
another house down there, and I forget who it was, but I used to shovel the snow for them.
I wonder if young kids today shovel snow.
I guess snowblowers.
Oh, yes, good one. I like that one.
But-
That's a good one. Okay, how about some foods? Let's talk about food a little bit. In town or even at home, did your family enjoy a certain meal together? And then if you went downtown, where might you go and what did you enjoy down there?
Okay, well, most of the time, every Sunday was sit down at lunchtime or early afternoon on Sundays, almost every Sunday
Yeah.
growing up. And downtown, we used to go to Fausti's at maybe after canteen at the high school, which was a dance, Saturday nights, and you pay a quarter, you go in, and it ran for like I think it ran from 8 to 11 or something like that.
Right.
The rule was if you left, you couldn't come back in. But a lot of times after the dance, we'd go down to Fausti's and get some French fries and a Coke or something. Or the pizza truck sometimes was parked out in front of post office.
It's been a while since we've seen the pizza truck. I've seen
Yeah.
it elsewhere, but it was on a regular, seems like it was a Friday.
Yeah, every Friday and Saturday night I
Pizza
think they were out there. I forget the people's last name. And for a while there, I used to buy my firewood from their son out in Rumney. But that was a long time ago.
That's good. Thank you, thank you. Did you have a best friend when you were growing up?
Yeah, well, I used to do a lot with Keith Hall. I used to do a lot of fishing in what was the big pond at Fox Park before they took the dam down where the ice house was. And we used to also fish in the brooks down there. It was with Dave Adams. Dave Adams was in my class in high school, and he was also the quarterback of the high school football team. In fact, he made All-State.
He was a good athlete.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
I
good
heard that.
athlete, and he made All-State in his junior year in high school for that size high school.
You're bringing up Fox Park, so I'm going to ask you, did you know how to swim before you went to Fox Park? Where do you learn to swim?
No, I didn't. Maybe if it, not really. No, didn't learn to really swim until I got to Rumney.
Oh.
We used to swim in the river, and we used to swim in the brook, and the brook was a really nice place to go and stuff. But
And I bring it up because that's my
Yeah.
lessons were there,
mhm.
and they had the dock there that we could dive, learn how to dive, but swimming was there too. Did
Oh.
you have a dock at Fox Park? Can you remember that?
We used to fish off some kind of a dock, I think, but it was because the ice house was there.
Behind
And-
us. That was a changing place too as well. Oh, the ice house was down below. Then they put a changing, we changed our clothes into summer wear, swimsuits, etc. Because that was part of the Park and Recreation
Oh,
program.
after they made the new pond. Oh, okay.
I
See, I wasn't in town then.
Oh, that's
see,
nice.
we were-
Different era.
Yeah,
You
we
must
were
be older than I am.
by quite a bit, I think.
I don't think so. Oh my gosh. I think you've already mentioned this. Did you have a hangout when you were a youngster in town?
In Plymouth, we moved out of Plymouth when I was in the 8th grade, so didn't really hang out a lot.
Then?
In Rumney, we used to do a lot of kid stuff over in Jakeworth Field, baseball and this and that. But the swimming holes at the river and at the brook were pretty hang out most of the day on the weekends if you weren't working or something like that. See, the deal was in the river, we would swim in the river until the brook warmed up enough so it was comfortable to swim in the brook.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was
Very
like,
smart.
and once the river got into the summer, the brook was a much more comfortable place to swim. The water in the river got pretty warm and it got pretty low. Whereas the water in the brook was coming down off the mountain, and it was also really deep. In a couple places, I would say it was probably 8 to 10 feet deep in that pond. There was
If
also
I-
a slide in the waterfall, and there was a cave underneath the waterfall.
No,
Yeah,
don't know this.
yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Hmm.
If I was to go to the streams and rivers that you you had as a child, I went there now, would be a lot of kids around?
Well, the one in Rumney at the river there's a house there now, so it's private property. And somebody got hurt at the swimming hole in Rumney when I was in the service, and so they posted that. So I think you can still get access to it, but you have to walk up from where the old crutch mill used to be. The building is
Okay.
still there. I'm not sure if it's used for anything or not.
For the younger generation, what is a crutch mill?
Crutch mill was a place where they manufactured crutches, wooden crutches for like the people at the hospital and things like that. Stuff.
And its size, fairly large?
I think it employed like maybe a dozen men.
Okay, okay.
And it's pretty good size, maybe 50 feet by 150, maybe 100 feet. Not a real big building, but also there was an old, at one time it was probably a water-powered mill because there used to be a wooden dam beside it. That was, most of it was gone, but there were still some remnants of it
Wow,
there.
wow. Let's see. What memories do you have of some of the stores, companies, industries that were downtown when you were younger? How about
Yeah,
that?
okay.
Younger. And maybe no longer, or conversely, what has come?
Well, let's see. Starting up where Foster's is, restaurant, there used to be the Shank Mill. They used to manufacture wooden popsicle sticks, wooden spoons, all kinds of wooden sticks and gadgets, and they were made out of most of them were made out of white birch, where they would steam them and then peel the wood off. It would be like a lathe, like take a veneer. You call it veneer. It comes off in long strips, and then they punch it and to make these wooden spoons and plates and
For the hoodsie cups. Am I
hoodsie,
right?
hoodsies, cup spoons, tongue depressors,
Tongue
popsicle
depressors?
sticks,
Oh, that's fun.
and long time after they closed down, I used to call on their mill up in Solon, Maine, and it was quite extensive operation up there too. And then you had Rochester Shoe Tree downtown across from Plymouth Furniture. They manufactured shoe trees, but prior to that, and before my time, but it used to be the Draper Maynard building where they used to make baseball equipment.
Still getting credit for being the first padded baseball glove in the United States. I have to think about that.
And then also, almost, they manufactured baseballs, but they used to farm out the making of the baseballs, or the sewing of the baseballs,
Very good.
to the people in the town or in the whole surrounding area. So years ago, you might go into a house and you might see some remnants of old baseballs or the thread or coverings.
Green and red thread.
Yeah, I think so.
They
I
use
don't
that.
remember.
Yeah,
but
I
I
went
can
in-
remember that.
I went into a store the other day, I won't tell you where, and standing right on top of it, not too far away, was one large red tube of, and the same over here, green.
Okay.
They've kept it how many years?
Oh, wow, long time.
Long
And I
time.
can remember when we moved to Keble Street in the garage, there was a couple D&M baseball bats. And I think if you went through some of the old houses in town, you might find some still kicking around in the basement of the attic
I know you're
and
right.
stuff like that. But
It was a godsend for an awful lot of people in the town, and as you said, it was a cottage industry. The baseballs were at home, could be every weekly. I think they
Right.
told me that they would take the resources to your house, and then you would whip them up, and then a week later they'd come back and give you more resources, but they'd take the items back and sell them.
yeah, because I can remember one of my friends in elementary school, Neil Kinsley, he used to live out on the old road up to Tenny Mountain, and his mother used to sew baseballs there.
If you chat with enough people in town, especially the older ones, they'll say, oh, my father did this, my brother did this. They have good memories.
Yeah,
good
of course,
memories.
back then there was a lot of logging and things like that. Now, Yettons
That's right.
and Chet Island used to have a sawmill out on, I call it Texas Hill Road. I think it's the old Mayhew Turnpike Road. And there were a couple of the mills around in the area in Rumney and surrounding areas. There used to be a lot of sawmills around, but most of them are gone now, and the ones that are still existing are very highly automated and very technical.
We're almost nearing completion, and I'm wondering what stories have we forgotten?
Oh gosh, let me just look at my notes for a second
Oh,
here.
please do, please do. Yeah. Someday
Well-
what we should do is go downtown on the main street. That would be a nice project. My head's always going to new projects.
I can do
And try
that.
to do the history of everybody that's on this spot, here, 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 and here. And maybe somehow, instead of just writing it down, there could be a plaque there. That would be fun. And it would be more difficult, though, to age it probably, but that would be a good homework assignment, too.
Oh gosh,
Have we done well?
I think we have.
Oh, well. All right.
But
Well,
this seems to go faster today than.
that means you're enjoying it. That's okay. I have a question that I'd like to ask while you're looking. You and I have been on this earth for a few years, and if you had some teenagers here, perhaps, because of our ages, because of your background, things that you've seen over time, what advice might you give these people here?
Well, I think maybe I think I would treat people the way that you would like to be treated,
Oh, that's
you
nice.
know? But I did find something
Oh,
here in my
good,
notes.
good, good, good.
Years ago, high school used to be up here on the hill. The athletic fields for the high school used to be down
D&M Park.
D&M Park. And at one time, they used to have, when we were kids, also the Park and Rec department here in Plymouth. And I think there was a man named Mr. Smith that used to be affiliated with it, but also one of the guys that used to run the athletics part was Russell Merrill, and he was married to Edna Merrill, and she was a nurse at the hospital.
Very good.
And then also one of the people that I remember a lot about, because he ran the Park and Rec, the baseball and that was Bob Chase's older brother Don used to be the umpire down here for almost all the baseball games at that time. Yeah.
Wow. Donnie and Bobby. Anybody else in that family that you can
I don't think
remember?
so. I think there was just the two boys.
think so,
And they
too.
used to live up in the area where exit 26 is. They took the house. And then Bob moved over to his parents lived over near the entrance to the elementary school.
Very good. Very good. Well, I've had a great time. Have you finished our information we wanted to share
I
with our
think
audience
so.
today?
We kind of jump around a little
That's
bit,
okay.
so it gets a little bit.
I probably
mixed
drove you
up.
crazy. That's all right.
Oh, I know. There's a couple other things I remember. Is back in the 80s, or late 70s, early 80s, we used to have a Christmas carnival in town, which was awesome. And I remember we'd have events, we'd have teams, like you'd have snow sculpture, swimming, a bunch of other stuff. It would end with a dance and stuff up at Silver Hall.
But that's when we had a
one-
bounty of snow.
Yes,
We
it
haven't
was.
had snow for a few years. That oh, that was a good one.
And then the other thing was well, we still have them, but the Christmas parades is really something I try not to miss.
That's
And
nice.
we used to have one of the fellows, and the thing I really enjoyed most was when that big fire truck came down the street with Santa Claus on it. And that Santa Claus had the most magnificent cape, like a Victorian Santa, dressed up on the...
And you can remember that today.
Yeah, well, that's not that long ago. I mean, well, they still have it now, but I think this Santa, they changed his outfit. And I used to like that darker...
Okay, so we'll
Stuff.
appeal to our audience and ask, where is it? Maybe somebody knows where it is.
Well, I think I know where it might be, but you can't tell that.
All right, I
Right.
think maybe it's time for us to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Jack. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining me.
Thank you.
Me, and I want to get out of here before we get into some trouble.
Right.
So we'll see you next time at another Memories of Plymouth program. And if you know people that might be interested in interviewing with us, please let me know. And how can you find? Let's see. I'll give you an email, louiseM@plymouth.edu. One more time, louiseM@plymouth.edu. And if you ever go in on Saturdays, because we're opening up in a couple weeks to the Historical Society, you can get information, you can leave your name and address, and I'd love to connect with you. It's really important that we save the stories that we've been telling over the past years here, what Plymouth was like, is like, and maybe someone in the future will learn from us. Thank you, everybody. See
Thank
you
you.
next time.